What's up, everybody? A Sparrow with a Gun here from Sleepless with another episode on the Space Reverse Engineers series. Hey, I got it right! First try. So in this episode, we are working on the Iridescent Sea Turtle from the Space Engineers Inspiration episode from last week. Now, this is a really interesting build. I have to give it that. It's very, very different from typical Space Engineers fanfare, in that it's not really even like a standard spaceship, it's more like an animal, and it's so accurately redone that I'm kind of blown away. I've found it really impressive in the Inspiration episode, and I find it really impressive here. So there's a couple of things, though, that I want to get out of the way. This might be a slightly shorter episode for two reasons. One, this doesn't have as large of like an interior or something to go over, and it does strike me as one of those that once you've seen a couple of the techniques that they're using to build it, it's probably going to be a lot of repetition from those styles. So bear that in mind. This episode might be a little bit shorter, but overall there's still a lot to learn from this. But it was the most voted one. It was a close call this episode, or this week, because I forget what it is, the RSN Defiant or Defense Assault Carrier or something was also in the running pretty strongly. It was like a 60-40 split. But anyways, one of the biggest things, and I will not say that I know how they did this, but one of the biggest things that the builder did that I find incredible is the color palette. The color palette, well, not even so much the palette, but the coloring, the way that it's painted, is phenomenal. And I truly don't know how this was done. It could have been done by hand. I mean, there's always that option, but you guys can see how many different colors there were. It could have been done through a 3D modeling type program if you loaded in the FBX, I guess, or through something. I don't know, but just the number of color changes through this are insane. So if it was done in any way, shape, or form by hand, that's just ridiculous. But from a distance, though, it looks like a friggin' sea turtle. I mean, it looks like a pixel art sea turtle, and you would never know it's in a Space Engineers. Plus, it has nose lights, nostril lights, one of my favorite things. And we've got this cool sensor-based jaw. Now, the jaw is actually pretty interesting. So, if you'll notice here, we've got a couple of rotors going on. Why there's more than one, I don't really know, because theoretically this one should be all you need. Oh, I see. So this rotor is attaching this section. Alright, so that's a little lip type of thing. Let's see if we can't open, close mouth. There we go. Let's get this back up. Yeah, so it's that little rotational. It's this little rotating part here. It's really bugging me that there's no gravity in here. But, so, oh, I see. Okay. So most everything else... Where is this blast door block attached to? Is that still part of... Ah, okay. So this rotor right here where my welder is attaching this section. So this floor section here. If I can ever stop snapping around. That would be cool. I really despise the mag boots in this game. And then this one is attached to these pistons, and then I'm guessing there's... Yeah, there's another rotor here that's attaching to that piston. So, essentially, I don't know if they would need to do anything. Let's check. With the buttons, it's probably just the piston. Okay, so toggle timer block. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Nope. Nope. Stop it. There we go. Timer. Toggle. There we go. Let's check this. So we've got jaw left, right, neck retractable 1 and 2. That's interesting. So there's 4 pistons involved. We have a sensor, which is, I'm guessing, on player detect. Corner LCD display. That's interesting. Wait a minute. Toggle mouth sensor. Oh, that's the timer. Okay. So that's not the sensor. Makes sense. Lock toggle for fins and jaw, gravity drive. So sensors probably, yeah, there it is. Nope. There we go. Button and toggle. Weird. Anyway, that's kind of irrelevant. But basically, we've got this cool... I don't see any jaw pistons, though. Where are the jaw pistons? Interesting. I'm curious now. Because I only see 2 pistons there. Let's see if we can't get into spectator mode and get a better bird's eye view. Alright, I found it. So, it's way back in here. I didn't even realize this was part of it. So the jaw and the mouth actually protrude out as it opens. So we have these here, and I've got my character standing over there by the button so that we can push it as we need to. So we've got that there. There's actually rotors over here as well that I didn't see. So there's rotors holding this part and attached here. Why there's that many, I'm not sure. I don't know if that would be absolutely necessary or not. I guess so, because the pistons have to be able to move, and this has to be able to rotate. So we've got the rotors there and the rotors there holding this together, and then we've got these connected here, and this is connected to this back section. But if we go further into the back section, you can actually see these 2 pistons here. So when we click the button, this whole... Basically, it's like a frame pulls back as this is then pushed down, kind of thing. So it's a lot more complicated than I actually gave it credit for to begin with. I thought it was simple, but it's really not. As you can see, all of this pulls back to allow this to come up, type of thing. So it's actually super elaborate type of thing. That's not just a simple piston setup, because it actually pushes that forward and backward as it retracts, which is really cool. Very, very interesting. As for the settings and things, I'm kind of assuming a lot of these rotors are left loose without too much of a brake type thing. Or braking speed or torque or anything like that. And the pistons are basically going to push and pull the rotors, and then the rotors just allow things to turn. That would be my guess. So, and then over here we have the main section, the main bridge, cockpit, whatever you want to call it. We have I believe this is a storage crate, probably accessing the whole rest of the storage system. And this is actually different from what I've been hearing. I think they're called hypergrids. What I mentioned in the last episode of using like the SE toolbox and stuff like that to kind of split and replace blocks to where they turn into something else. This is different than that. This is actually the reverse of the small ship grid for detail in a large ship. This is actually the reverse. It's like a small ship grid that then uses a large grid section to access some of the block types. So let me go back in here so we can actually look at the different things. So we have, let's see if we can find the connecting rotor, because as you can see, all this is small grid, I believe, and all this is small grid up here. But I think this might actually be large cargo. I think that's actually small grid as well. I can't tell. Yeah, let's go back into spectator for a second, since we can fly through all this stuff without issue. So we have a connector there. Oh, it's possible that it's the connector. No. No, I don't think so. That's just 2 connectors. So, then we have to ask the question, where does this grid attach to? I know that there's these rotors, which is probably where it's... I think that's where the connection actually is. Yeah, we're going to go with that. So, basically what's going on is they're coming off of a small grid using a large grid rotor with a large grid head to then turn into a large grid block section. So what we have here, this is a really cool setup too. This is a gravity drive, but I believe they're using a script to control the WASD keys so that you can fly it like a normal ship, but it's done with a gravity drive, which is really awesome. So we've got artificial mass blocks here, and we have a couple of gravity generators that are facing different directions. We've got two going... I'm trying to remember exactly how the grav drives work too, because if you have the mass blocks here, it's essentially whatever way they're facing. So these would be downward. This one here would be a lateral to the right. Those would be forward thrusters, so I'm guessing there's somewhere for the back to stop it. I think. I don't actually see any. There's one going that way. Huh, hold up. That's weird. I really expected there to be some forward-facing ones, or reverse-facing ones. Unless it's just because when you turn off the gravity it just stops. But that's kind of interesting. That can't be right. There's gotta be some of them somewhere. Don't they? Maybe? Possibly? I guess not. I don't see any reverse-facing gravity generators, unless I'm just completely blind and missing something. Which, if I am, just let me know. But I don't think I am. I don't think I'm actually seeing any reversed. Weird. So it looks like we have lateral, down. I also don't see any... oh, never mind. I got it. Never mind. I'm an idiot. So what they did is we have one going this way, one going that way, and I'm betting you one of these is set to reverse. That's gotta be what it is. Smart, actually. Field width acceleration is 0.1 g, or 0.01 g, to be more precise. And I'm guessing this will be negative, if I can ever get a hold of this. There we go. And nope, that's 0.01 as well. Weird. Let's try this. Oh, they're not shown? There we go. Gravity drives. Let's see. 0, unless the controls are setting the speed, which is possible. Interesting. That one's 0.2. Oh, that's got to be the forward-facing. Last run. Gravity drives enabled. Okay, so I'll have to pick that apart at some point. But basically, they're using the gravity drive here as well as the artificial mass blocks for the larger gyroscopes, a jump drive, a programmable block, which is no doubt running the grav drive system because it's on the same grid. So that's essentially, and they're using a blast door block in between the rotors so that it doesn't trip the collisions of the small grids. So that's how they're basically setting that up, which is really, really cool because I love gravity drives because you can circumvent the damage. So we fly forward. Yeah, we can actually reverse. So it's got to be something in that script that can control different directions because it looks like they're all set different ways. It's weird. Anyways, but yeah, so I really do like the gravity drive system. If I can figure out how to use those scripts and things, I might actually start implementing them into my own. And I also am curious about the power consumption versus thrusters. So let's see, we have current input max required is 567. So I wonder if that's actually cheaper on power than regular thrusters, because if it is, then man, I probably am going to start using gravity drives more. We have some large reactors on the small grid over here connected to a conveyor system. So that's basically how all the inner guts work. That's why I said it's fairly simple. It's not really all that fancy. Now, there are some structural building things that I think are pretty cool. How this color gradient and stuff is done is nuts. This has to have been done... I mean, in theory it doesn't. You could do it in like Photoshop and then take the color palette and just do it all manually, but ugh, that would take longer than building this thing. So this is kind of interesting. We've talked before in other episodes about a ribbed design, which has this like indented section that sticks out every other arch kind of thing from the rest of the ship to give it some more depth. This is one of the few cases where it's actually like real ribs, though. I mean, this is like the thing's skeletal system, so I thought that was a nice touch of using... It's not even just a turtle, it's like actually you're inside the turtle. I think that's hilarious and awesome at the same time. So yeah, this is fairly simple, though. We've seen it before. It's where you're using 2x1 ramps going to 1x1s for a couple spaces, then going back to 2x1s, skip a space, 2x1s, skip a space, and now this part's interesting. It's back-to-back bases of the 2x1 slopes, but then we have some curved ones along with a standard block to create that kind of vertebrae look. So that's kind of neat. I think that's pretty cool. A lot of this looks to me, anyway, like basically using slopes and 2x1 ramps to essentially just kind of match the shape that they were looking for to get the right curvature. It's kind of what it looks like. I don't see anything particularly specific or fancy. It's just done in a way that kind of creates the proper shape. So I can't say that it was done with any kind of technique to make it do something specific as much as it was just to kind of get things the way that it was supposed to look type of thing. It doesn't seem quite as patterned as some, other than things like this that we've seen before, where if you go out a block you can create some staggering depth. It's a staggering amount of depth. Stuff like that. We have kind of a merging point here with the small grid as well, where we stop doing these 2x1s and just kind of go into a 1x1 corner wall type of thing. We got the batteries down here with the antennas and some other stuff. Let's go back outside. I will say it's very simple, but I do really like this effect. This right here reminds me of like a dumbed down version of something Imperial, like Throne Room, where you have a walkway and then on the side you've got like these kind of platform pillar things. It's kind of an interesting look. But yeah, so this is basically a connection point for the cargo space, I think. But I like the sunk in circular shape that they did with the slopes here. And then it has an outer frame around it. That's kind of cool. This is ultimately unavoidable. I personally don't like it because you're leaving the thing exposed down here. I would have liked to see it with a block there, but with the space constraints they had here, like I said, it's probably unavoidable to leave those gaps there. I really hate mag boots. And I really like this. This is kind of cool too, using the 2x1 corner nose, or slope nose, corner tip. There we go. Close enough. And then the half block slope creates this nice little railing kind of thing. And then the corner lights facing inward makes it for a really cool lit walkway type of thing. So that's pretty neat. Now, out here, the like I said, some of this one is a little different because it wasn't really for following any specific design style. It was mostly, I can see a lot of this stuff was mostly done to get the shape correct kind of thing. So it doesn't follow some of the same building patterns that we've seen before. where it's like, oh, this one has an industrial look, or this one, or you see this a lot in sleek builds. It kind of has its own thing just to make the shapes and everything look right. So it's really, really cool. I would be very interested to know how this paint style was done. Actually, even the shell and stuff I could see being done through some kind of 3D modeling import type thing. But again, if that was done by hand, that's nuts too. But I'm really curious about the painting, because it just seems so diverse to get the color right, that I feel like whoever did this, if they did it by hand, would be bald. Or at least I would think so, because they probably pulled all their hair out while doing this. That's just my take on it. Another cool little feature is the fins. So as you can see here, there's a very slight gap where it's hooked up to a rotor. There's nothing particularly fancy about that technique. I mean, we've all seen rotor setups before. But, again, it's really cool to see it done in this way. That's very seamless. It's very difficult to notice the seam. I mean, you can kind of tell if you're really looking, but at a distance, it almost looks like they're fixed until they start moving around. So that's pretty cool. The shape of the fin is pretty neat as well. I'm no turtle expert by any stretch, but other than the Teenage Mutant kind, ninja kind, but this does look pretty accurate, especially from a distance kind of thing. I mean, they even include the little tail type thing. I think that's what that is. If it's not the tail, then base of the spine? I don't know. And there's a connector here and a small connector as well. I didn't notice that. So they have a large and a small connector for hooking up to other ships. But again, like I said, you can kind of see that they're using the 2x1 slopes and the regular 1x1 slopes, and they're kind of just going until it matches the right shape and gives them the right perspective and things. It doesn't really strike me as using some of the building techniques that we've seen in a lot of different builds, even though they're done by different people, but they still maximize or make use of the same techniques. This one strikes me as a bit more unique in that it's just kind of using the blocks to make it work. We've got this. Now you do see a lot of this staggering slope effect. This is featured prominently throughout the whole thing. So if you're looking for how to do a gradient or a gradual, this would definitely be a build to nitpick. Because there's a lot of different examples like this. You've got 2x1s going down until you want to sharpen it to match up the last one. So then you go to a 1x1 and then you go down here. But then this one you do less. You take this down a block. Now this is kind of cool too, because they're using half blocks and the nose, or the tips, and then a base, and then a tip, and then a base, and then this is half block, full block, half block. And it's allowing a much more gradual stagger. It's not nearly as cut and dry as just if you went block slope, block slope, block slope, block slope kind of thing. It would look way more blocky. The use of half blocks in between everything is what makes this a lot more gradual, which is a really, really smart way to do this. So much so that I'm kind of kicking myself for not thinking of doing something similar in my own builds, because otherwise you'd get something like this that's a very sharp fall off. Even when you use the ramps instead of the slopes, it kind of just drops off. And using the every other half block and full block, you get a much nicer, smoother curve kind of thing. But yeah, like I said, this one might be a little bit shorter because I don't really have a whole lot else to go over. Like I said, there's only a couple of things that I see that have been done like over the entire build, like following the curve lines and using the half ones to stagger it and stuff like that. But once you kind of look at all that stuff, you start realizing that it's kind of the same way through like most of the hull of this ship. Although I am curious where this rotor's connected. Oh, there it is. I see it now. Gotcha. But yeah, I do like the fins too, because I'm sure that it's set with no brakes unless you do the lock function, and so when you fly, they do kind of flap around, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so I think with that, we're going to wrap things up here for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, and I will see you all next time. Peace.